What happens when a man everyone treats like a background worker quietly lets the truth expose itself? I was standing in my yard, steel beams on the ground, when my son-in-law showed up with a brand new angle grinder and a smug smile. I let him plug it in himself, and that was the moment I saw fear replace confidence. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The afternoon sun was cutting low through the maple trees when Evan's truck rolled up. I heard it before I saw it. That aggressive rumble he paid extra for, the kind that announces arrival like a challenge. I was bent over a stack of steel angle iron, measuring cuts for the fence posts I'd been planning all week. 30 years in the mill taught me to measure twice, cut once. Evan never learned that lesson. He climbed out wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my weekly grocery run, designer jeans that had never seen a day's real work, and boots so clean they might as well have been slippers. The grinder case swung from his hand like a trophy. "Marlow," he called out, not waiting for me to straighten up. "Still using that antique?" He meant my corded Milwaukee, the one I'd maintained for 15 years. New brushes every season, cord inspected monthly, guard checked before every use. It sat on my workbench, modest and reliable. "Gets the job done," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. Evan laughed, the kind of laugh that's meant to be heard. "Man, you really are stuck in the past. Check this out." He popped open the case with theatrical flair. Inside sat a cordless angle grinder, bright yellow and black, all aggressive angles and LED battery indicators. The kind of tool that looks impressive in the store but tells you nothing about how it performs under real conditions. "Top of the line," Evan said. "Brushless motor, variable speed, 20-volt system. Cost me $400, but when you know what you're doing, you invest in quality." I nodded slowly, running my eyes over it. The guard looked thin, almost decorative. The handle grip was ergonomic plastic, the kind that feels good in the store but gets slippery with actual use. And the safety switch, I couldn't even see a proper lock-off mechanism. "Nice looking," I said neutrally. "Nice looking?" Evan's smile widened. "Marlow, this thing will cut through your steel in half the time. Modern engineering, man. Not everyone can handle it, but some of us keep up with the industry." I let that one float by. Across the fence, I saw Caleb Rourke lean against his porch railing, coffee mug in hand. Caleb had been a site supervisor for 23 years before retiring. He'd seen more tool incidents than most people see in a lifetime. His eyes were already narrowed. "What model is that?" Caleb called over. Evan barely glanced at him. "RapidMax 9000. You probably haven't heard of it." "Heard plenty," Caleb said quietly. "Might want to check the recall lists." Evan's smile tightened. "Recall lists. Jesus. You old guys and your paranoia. This is brand new. Top-rated online." "Online," Caleb repeated, like he was tasting something sour. He caught my eye and gave the smallest shake of his head. Evan turned back to me, emboldened by his own dismissal. "Seriously, Marlow, when are you going to admit that experience isn't the same as being up to date? You've been doing the same job for, 30 years? And you're still, third shift floor crew?" "That's right," I said. "Meanwhile, I'm running entire project timelines, making real decisions, using real tools." He hefted the grinder case. "You want me to show you how this works? Might learn something." Lena's car was pulling into the driveway now. My daughter, 30 years old, with her mother's eyes and a habit of looking away when things got uncomfortable. She stepped out slowly, purse over her shoulder, already reading the tension in the yard. "Hey, Dad," she said, but her eyes went to Evan first. "Hey, sweetheart, Evan was just showing me his new toy." "It's not a toy," Evan said, sharper than necessary. "It's professional equipment." Lena crossed her arms, standing closer to Evan than to me. "Are you helping Dad with the fence?" "I'm offering," Evan said. "But you know how he is. Stuck in his ways." I looked at my daughter, waited for her to say something. She glanced at me, then away, focusing on a spot somewhere near the maple tree. "You've been working all day, Dad," she said quietly. "Maybe Evan's tool would make it easier." There it was, that small surrender, that tiny shift that said she'd already chosen a side, or at least chosen not to choose mine. "I appreciate the offer," I said, keeping my voice level. "But I know my tools, I know their limits, I know what they'll do before I switch them on." Evan scoffed. "That's the whole point. You don't need to baby modern equipment. It's smarter than you think." "Smarter than the operator?" I asked. "Smarter than outdated caution," Evan shot back. Caleb was still watching from his porch. A car passed on the street, slow and quiet. The sun dropped another inch, stretching our shadows longer across the grass. "Tell you what," I said, gesturing to the steel beams. "You want to show me what that grinder can do? Go ahead. I need a clean 45-degree cut on that angle iron. 3 of them. I'll watch." Evan's grin returned, sharp and confident. "Now we're talking." He pulled the grinder from its case, checked the battery, both at full charge, glowing green, and moved toward the steel. I stepped back, giving him space. Lena stayed where she was, arms still crossed, face carefully neutral. "Safety glasses?" I offered, holding out a pair. "Got my own," Evan said, pulling a slim pair from his pocket. They looked stylish. I doubted they were rated for metal fragments. He knelt beside the first beam, positioning the grinder. I watched his hands. Confident grip, no hesitation, but his fingers were too close to the trigger guard, and he hadn't checked the disc for cracks or wear. "You checked the blade?" I asked. "It's new," he said, annoyed. "Fresh out of the box." "Even new discs can have fractures from shipping," I said. "Takes 5 seconds." "Marlow, I know what I'm doing." Lena shifted her weight. "Dad, let him work." I nodded, stepped back another foot. Caleb set his coffee mug down on the railing, hands free. Evan positioned the grinder against the steel, angled it wrong, too aggressive, too much surface contact, and squeezed the trigger. The grinder screamed to life, high-pitched, angry, the disc blurring into invisibility. Evan pressed down, and sparks exploded outward in a golden shower. The steel shrieked. The grinder bucked in his hands, just a little, just enough, and Evan's confident smile vanished. His knuckles blanched around the grip. The angle shifted, the disc caught wrong, and the grinder snapped hard to the left. Evan yanked it back, overcorrected, and the motor whined under uneven pressure. He released the trigger. The yard fell quiet except for the fading whine of the motor and the soft tick of cooling metal. Evan stood up, breathing harder than he should have been. The cut was jagged, uneven, and barely an inch deep. Useless. "Just warming up," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. I didn't say anything. Neither did Caleb. Lena looked at the ground. Evan stared at the grinder in his hands like it had betrayed him. And I knew, right then, that this wasn't about a tool. It wasn't about a fence. It was about something much older, much quieter, and much more dangerous. Respect doesn't come from noise. It comes from knowing when to be silent and when to let someone else make the first mistake. I let Evan try again, watched him struggle, watched the fear creep in behind his eyes as the grinder kicked and screamed and refused to obey. And when he finally set it down, hands trembling slightly, I simply picked up my old Milwaukee, made 3 perfect cuts in under 2 minutes, and went inside for water. Lena followed Evan to his truck. They didn't say goodbye. Caleb caught my eye and raised his coffee mug in a silent salute. The fence post would wait until tomorrow. The mill ran 3 shifts, and I'd been working thirds for 11 years. Midnight to 8 in the morning, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 when orders stacked up. Most people thought it was punishment, the shift nobody wanted. But I liked the quiet. Fewer supervisors, fewer meetings, fewer people trying to prove something. Just the work, the machines, and the hum of steel being shaped into something useful. I clocked in at 11:45 on Monday night, lunch pail in hand, boots laced tight. The locker room smelled like coffee, grease, and decades of accumulated sweat. A few guys from second shift were changing out, moving slow, exhausted. I nodded to them. They nodded back. Nobody talked much during the transition. I opened my locker. My spare gloves were right where I'd left them, folded neat next to my backup safety glasses. Everything in its place. Consistency mattered when you worked with equipment that could take a hand in half a second. "Hey, Trasker." I turned. Young guy named Ben, maybe 26, fresh out of some technical program. Good worker, but eager. Too eager sometimes. "Yeah? Heard your son-in-law's doing pretty well for himself. Project management, right?" I shut my locker. "That's what he tells people." Ben laughed nervously. "Yeah, man. He was saying you've been on the floor for 30 years? Close enough? That's dedication, man. Real old school." Old school. That phrase that sounded like a compliment but wasn't. That phrase that meant outdated, obsolete, someone who couldn't or wouldn't move up. "Someone has to make the steel," I said. "Oh, totally. I just mean, with all that experience, you ever think about moving into management or something?" "No?" Ben blinked. "No?" "I like the work," I said simply. "I'm good at it." "Right. Yeah. Cool." He shifted his weight. Evan was just saying how, the industry's changing fast and people who don't adapt kind of get left behind. But obviously you're doing fine. I studied him. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Evan said that? Not like directly about you, just in general. You know how he talks. Big picture stuff. Yeah, I said. I know how he talks. I walked out onto the floor before he could say anything else. The mill stretched out under yellow industrial lights, vast and loud and alive. The overhead crane moved like a sleeping giant, hauling steel plate from the cooling racks to the cutting stations. Sparks flew from the welding booths. The air tasted like metal and oil. This was my world. Had been for 3 decades, and I knew every inch of it. I checked the work orders for my station, standard cuts tonight, nothing complicated. I powered up my saw, checked the coolant levels, inspected the blade for wear. Routine, precise, safe. 2 hours in, Jimmy Park came by with coffee. Jimmy was 52, worked seconds, but sometimes stayed late when his wife had her book club. He handed me a cup without asking if I wanted it. Thanks. Heard your son-in-law's making waves, Jimmy said, leaning against the safety railing. I paused mid-cut, finished the piece, and shut down the saw. Where'd you hear that? Break room. Apparently he's been talking about how manual labor's on the way out. Automation, AI, all that. He's not wrong, I said. Some jobs will go. Yeah, but he was saying it like people who still do this kind of work are too dumb to do anything else. I sipped the coffee. It was terrible, like always. He say my name? Jimmy looked uncomfortable. Not directly. But people connect dots. I nodded. Of course they did. Evan wasn't subtle. He never had been. You gonna say something to him? Jimmy asked. About what? About running his mouth? People can say what they want, I said. Doesn't change the work. Jimmy shook his head, smiling a little. Man, you're calm. I'd have said something by now. Saying something doesn't fix anything. Maybe not, but it feels good. I smiled despite myself. You're probably right. Jimmy left. I went back to work. The hours ticked by in a steady rhythm of measurement, cutting, inspection, no drama, no audience. Just me and the steel. At 6 a.m, the floor supervisor came around for the shift-end walkthrough. His name was Greg Poole, 15 years younger than me, but decent enough. He checked clipboards, nodded at completed orders, asked if there were any issues. All good, I told him. Clean station, he noted. Efficient as always. Habit. He hesitated, then said, Heard your son-in-law is working in project logistics now. I kept my face neutral. That's right. He ever talk about the mill, about the work we do here? Sometimes. What's he say? I looked at Greg directly. Why? Greg shifted. Just curious. Industry's changing. Guys like him, they see it different than we do. Guys like him see PowerPoints, I said. We see the actual steel. Greg smiled. Fair point. He moved on to the next station. I finished my shift, clocked out, and drove home through the empty pre-dawn streets. The house was dark when I pulled in. Lena's car wasn't there. She and Evan had their own place across town. I went inside, ate a quiet breakfast, and tried to sleep. But I kept thinking about Ben's words, about Jimmy's, about the way people were repeating things Evan said, like he was some kind of authority, and the way Lena had stood beside him in the yard, silent and distant. I remembered when she was young. 7, maybe 8. I'd brought her to the mill on a Saturday when I had to check on some weekend maintenance. She wore my spare hard hat, too big for her head, and held my hand tight as we walked through the silent factory floor. She'd asked 100 questions. How does the crane know where to go? Why do the sparks fly? What happens if you cut the steel wrong? I answered every one, patiently, completely, and she listened like I was the smartest man alive. When had that changed? When had I become background noise in her life? I thought about Evan, standing in my yard, holding a tool he didn't understand, mocking the equipment that had kept me employed and safe for 30 years. I thought about his jagged, useless cut, the way his hands had shaken when the grinder kicked, the way he'd tried to cover his fear with dismissive words. And I thought about the grinder itself, that bright yellow and black casing, that aggressive design, that model number Caleb had recognized. RapidMax 9000. I got out of bed, went to my computer, and opened the browser. Typed in the model number, hit search. The results came back fast. 3 safety recalls in 18 months. Reports of disc fractures, handle failures, battery overheating, injuries, lawsuits. The manufacturer had issued statements, promised fixes, released firmware updates. But the problems kept happening. The tool looked good, performed well in short bursts, but under sustained pressure, the kind of pressure real work demanded, it failed, dangerously. I printed the recall notices, 4 pages, dated, official, documented. Then I closed the browser and went back to bed. Sleep came easier this time, because I'd learned a long time ago that the most dangerous thing in any workplace wasn't the equipment. It was the person who thought they were too smart to be hurt by it. And Evan was exactly that kind of person. The hardware store on Saturday morning was a circus. Families stocking up for weekend projects, contractors grabbing supplies, retirees wandering the aisles with lists and reading glasses. I needed lag bolts, wood screws, and a replacement blade for my circular saw. Simple stuff. In and out. I was in the fasteners aisle, sorting through bins of galvanized steel bolts, when I heard the laugh. Loud, confident, unmistakable. Evan. I looked up. He was 3 aisles over in the power tools section, holding court with 2 younger guys I didn't recognize. Both wore cargo shorts and expensive sneakers. One had a tape measure clipped to his belt like a badge of honor. They were listening to Evan like he was delivering a sermon. The problem with most people, Evan was saying, loud enough to carry, is they treat tools like they're sacred, like you need 20 years of experience just to plug something in. The 2 guys laughed on cue. I'm serious, Evan continued. My father-in-law, great guy, works at a steel mill, has for like 3 decades, but he acts like every tool is going to blow up in your face if you don't perform some ritual first. It's all fear-based thinking. I put the bolts back in the bin carefully, kept my hands steady. Fear-based thinking, one of the guys repeated, impressed. Exactly. It's why innovation stalls. People get comfortable with outdated processes and refuse to trust new technology. Meanwhile, the industry moves on without them. What's he do at the mill? The other guy asked. Floor work, cutting, measuring, basic stuff. Been doing the same job since the 90s. No promotions? Evan shrugged. Some people peak early. It's not a judgment, it's just reality. Not everyone's built for management. I stood there, bolts forgotten, listening to my son-in-law reduce 30 years of skilled labor into a cautionary tale. A punchline, a symbol of stagnation. The rage that rose up in me was quiet. It didn't scream, it didn't demand immediate action, it just settled into my chest like a stone, heavy and cold and patient. Anyway, Evan said, moving toward the checkout, the key is staying ahead of the curve, learning fast, adapting faster. That's how you succeed. They walked past my aisle. Evan didn't see me. Or if he did, he didn't acknowledge it. Just kept walking, still talking, still laughing. I finished my shopping in silence. Paid. Drove home, unloaded the truck, put everything away in its proper place. Then I sat on my back porch with a beer and thought, Evan wasn't just undermining me in private anymore. He was constructing a public narrative, shaping how other people perceived me. Casual remarks that sounded harmless but landed like small cuts. A slow erosion through constant dismissals. And Lena wasn't stopping him. She was letting it happen, maybe even agreeing with it in her silence. I thought about confronting him, walking up, calm and direct, and telling him to stop. But confrontation required 2 people willing to listen. Evan wasn't that person. He'd twist it, make me the villain, the oversensitive old man who couldn't take a joke. No, confrontation wasn't the answer. I pulled out my phone and opened the browser. Searched for Evan's company. Found his name on the staff page, Project Coordinator. His LinkedIn profile was public, full of buzzwords and borrowed credibility. He listed skills he didn't have, certifications that didn't exist, projects he'd barely touched. I kept digging. Found his social media, public posts about tools, techniques, efficiency, photos of equipment he claimed to use daily, comments from friends praising his expertise, and then I found the video, 30 seconds long, posted 2 weeks ago. Evan in someone's garage, surrounded by tools, talking directly to the camera. A lot of people still think you need years of training to handle industrial equipment safely, he said, grinning. But honestly, most of those safety protocols are just liability covers. If you're smart, if you're confident, you can skip half the steps and get the job done twice as fast. He demonstrated by running a circular saw without adjusting the guard. Fast, aggressive, careless. The cut was sloppy, but he didn't seem to notice. See? Easy. Don't let the old guard scare you. The video had 200 views, 15 likes, 3 comments, all supportive. I watched it twice. Then I saved the link. Because Evan wasn't just mocking me. He was advocating for dangerous practices. He was telling people, young people, inexperienced people, that safety was optional, that caution was weakness, and eventually someone was going to get hurt. I finished my beer and went inside, found the folder where I kept my old union newsletters, dug through a year's worth until I found what I was looking for, a contact card for the union safety representative, Guy named Tom something. I'd met him once at a training seminar. He'd given me his card, told me to call if I ever saw something that needed reporting. I'd never called, never needed to, until now. I typed the number into my phone but didn't dial yet. Just saved it. Let it sit there, waiting. Because there was a difference between reacting and planning. Between anger and strategy. And I'd learned a long time ago that the best way to handle someone who thought they were untouchable was to let them keep thinking that right up until the moment they realized they weren't. Evan wanted to be the expert, the authority, the guy who knew better. Fine. Let him be that guy. Let him keep talking, keep posting, keep building his reputation on borrowed confidence and shortcuts. And when the time came, when the consequences arrived, I'd be standing exactly where I'd always been, right in the background, quiet, watching, ready. Monday evening, I drove to the Union Hall downtown. It was an old brick building, 3 stories, with a parking lot that had seen better decades. Inside, the walls were covered with safety posters, worker rights flyers, and black and white photos of strikes from the 70s. It smelled like old coffee and photocopier toner. The woman at the front desk looked up from her computer. "Help you?" "I'm here to see Tom Brennan, safety rep." "He expecting you." "No, but it's about a safety concern." She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then nodded toward the stairs. "3rd floor, office 12. I climbed slowly. My knees weren't what they used to be, but I didn't rush. Rushing led to mistakes. Tom Brennan's office was small and cluttered. Filing cabinets lined one wall, a desk buried under paperwork dominated the center, and a single window looked out over the parking lot. Tom himself was mid-40s, stocky, with reading glasses perched on his head and ink stains on his shirt cuff. "Marlow Trasker," he said, standing to shake my hand. "I remember you. Safety seminar. What, 5 years back?" "6. Time moves. Sit. What's going on?" I sat, put my hands on my knees, kept my voice level. "I need to understand something about safety violations. Specifically, who's responsible when someone advocates for skipping protocols?" Tom leaned back in his chair. "Advocates how?" "Online, social media, telling people that safety measures are unnecessary, demonstrating improper tool use." Tom's expression shifted. "Is this person employed in a capacity where they're training others?" "Not officially, but he works in project coordination, has access to job sites, and he's got an audience." "How big?" "Small now, but growing." Tom pulled a notepad closer. "What kind of violations are we talking about?" I described the video. The circular saw with the guard bypassed. The angle grinder used without proper inspection. The dismissive language about safety protocols, I kept it factual. No emotion, just observations. Tom wrote it all down. "You have evidence? Links?" I pulled out my phone and showed him. He watched the video twice, expression darkening. "This is reckless," he said finally. "But unless he's directly employed in a regulated industry, it's not technically a union matter. What if he's working on commercial job sites? Then it's a different story. You know where he's working? I can find out." Tom studied me. "Why bring this to me? Why not just talk to him directly?" "Because talking to him won't change anything. He thinks he's right. He thinks caution is weakness." "And you think he's dangerous?" "I know he's dangerous. I've seen him handle equipment. I've heard him talk. And eventually someone's going to trust him and get hurt." Tom set his pen down. "Okay, here's what I can do. If you can document where he's working, specific sites, specific companies, I can flag it with the site supervisors. They'll review his credentials, his safety training, his compliance records. If he's cutting corners, they'll find it. And if they don't care, then I escalate to OSHA. But that takes time. Investigations, paperwork, all of it." "I understand." Tom handed me a business card. "Keep me updated. Document everything. Videos, posts, locations, build a file. And Marlow?" "Yeah? If this is personal, be careful. Revenge disguised as safety concerns doesn't help anyone." "It's not revenge," I said. It's prevention." Tom didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. I left the Union Hall and drove to the public library. Found a quiet computer station in the back. Opened a fresh email account under a generic name. No connection to me. Then I started searching. Evan's company had a public contracts page, listed their current projects, a warehouse renovation downtown, a residential development on the west side, a commercial refit near the airport. I copied the addresses, cross-referenced them with city permit databases, Found the site supervisors' names, the safety officers assigned, the inspection schedules. Then I searched for Evan's certifications. Found his OSHA 10-hour card, basic, entry level. No advanced training, no specialized endorsements, just the bare minimum required to step onto a job site. I downloaded everything, saved it to a thumb drive, cleared the browser history, logged out. Back in my truck, I sat in the library parking lot and stared at the dashboard. This wasn't how I'd imagined spending my 50s. Investigating my own son-in-law, building a file on someone who was supposed to be family. But Evan had made his choices, and those choices had consequences. I thought about Lena, about whether she knew what Evan was doing, whether she cared, whether she'd stand by him when the truth came out, or whether she'd finally see him clearly. I didn't know, and that uncertainty hurt worse than Evan's disrespect ever could. I drove home through the evening traffic, past strip malls and gas stations and neighborhoods that all looked the same. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple, beautiful and indifferent. At home, I made dinner, ate alone, watched an hour of television without really seeing it. Then I went to my workshop in the garage and worked on the fence posts. Measured, cut, sanded. Slow, methodical, precise. Around 10, my phone buzzed. Text from Lena. "Hey, Dad. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a full minute, trying to decide what it meant. Was it genuine concern? Obligation? Guilt? I typed back, "I'm fine. Busy with work. How are you?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Good. Evan got assigned to a big project. He's excited." "That's great." Another pause. Then, "He said you two had a thing about tools last week." A thing. Like it was a disagreement over sports teams. Like it was trivial. "Just different approaches," I typed. "He didn't mean to offend you." There it was. The automatic defense. The reflex to protect him, even when she hadn't been there. Even when she didn't know what had really been said. "I know," I lied. "Okay. Love you, Dad." "Love you too." I set the phone down and went back to the workbench. But my hands weren't steady anymore. The careful precision I'd maintained all day was cracking. I thought about my wife. She'd passed 6 years ago. Cancer, quick and cruel. She'd always been the bridge between me and Lena, the translator, the peacemaker. Without her, the distance between my daughter and me had grown wider, and Evan had filled that gap, confident and loud and always so certain. I wondered what my wife would say now, whether she'd tell me to let it go, to be the bigger person, to preserve the family peace, or whether she'd tell me to stand my ground, to protect people from someone who didn't understand the weight of his own carelessness. I wanted to believe she'd say the second one, but I didn't know. All I knew was that I'd started something and now I had to see it through, not for revenge, not for pride, but because somewhere out there, someone young and eager and trusting was going to take Evan's advice. And when they did, when the tool kicked or the blade shattered or the guard failed, they'd pay the price for his arrogance. And I couldn't live with that. 2 weeks passed. Quiet on the surface, but I was busy underneath. I worked my shifts at the mill, kept my head down, spoke only when necessary. Nobody noticed. That was the advantage of being background. You could move without drawing attention. I tracked Evan through his social media. He posted regularly now, more confident than ever. Photos of job sites, tools lined up like trophies, captions full of platitudes about efficiency and modern thinking. His follower count was up to 300. Small, but growing. He posted another video, this one at the warehouse renovation downtown. Hard hat on, clipboard in hand, talking about cutting timelines by eliminating redundant safety checks. "Most inspections are just box checking," he said to the camera. "If you know what you're doing, you can streamline the whole process." Behind him, workers moved scaffolding. I paused the video, zoomed in. No safety harnesses. Rails improperly secured. Stacked materials too close to the edge. I saved the video, added it to the file. Then I called the site supervisor, used a voice just formal enough to sound official. "This is a courtesy call regarding site compliance at the 4th Street warehouse project. We've received reports of potential safety violations, scaffolding, material storage, worker protection." The supervisor, a man named Ed Caldwell, sounded defensive immediately. "Who is this?" "Concerned observer. I suggest a walkthrough before the next inspection." "We're fully compliant." "Check the scaffolding on the west side. Check the material staging near the loading dock. And check your coordinator's credentials." I hung up before he could ask more questions. 3 days later, Evan posted a rant about overreaching safety bureaucrats who didn't understand real-world conditions. He didn't mention specifics, but the timing told me everything. The warehouse site had been flagged. Ed Caldwell had done his walkthrough, found problems, made corrections, and someone, maybe Evan, maybe someone else, had gotten reprimanded. Good. At the mill, things stayed steady. I worked, I measured, I cut, I went home, but people were starting to talk. Jimmy Park cornered me in the break room one night. Heard Evan's company got flagged for safety violations. Where'd you hear that? Word gets around. People know you two are connected. He's my son-in-law. That's the extent of it. Jimmy gave me a look. You didn't have anything to do with it? I work here. He works there. 2 different worlds. Jimmy didn't push, but I could tell he didn't quite believe me. That was fine. Suspicion without proof was just noise. Caleb came by the house on a Saturday morning, brought donuts. We sat on the back porch with coffee and didn't talk about anything important for the first 10 minutes. Just weather, sports, neighborhood gossip. Then he said, "You hear about the recall on those RapidMax grinders?" I sipped my coffee. Heard something. Companies facing lawsuits, discs shattering mid-use, 3 serious injuries so far. CPSC's involved now. That's a shame. Caleb smiled, slow and knowing. You wouldn't happen to know anyone who owns one of those, would you? Might. And you wouldn't happen to have mentioned the recall to them? Haven't had the chance? Caleb nodded. Well, just in case you do get the chance, might want to bring it up. Sooner rather than later. I'll keep that in mind. He left an hour later. As his truck pulled away, I thought about Evan's grinder. Still sitting in its case, probably. Unused since that day in my yard when it had kicked and made him nervous. He'd never touched it again, too proud to admit he couldn't handle it. Too stubborn to get training. But eventually, he'd try again. And when he did, if that disc shattered, if metal fragments turned into shrapnel, if his confidence met physics at high speed, I couldn't let that happen. Not even to him? I texted Lena. Can you and Evan come by tomorrow? Need to talk about something. She replied an hour later. Is everything okay? Fine. Just want to see you both. Okay. Around 2? Perfect. Sunday afternoon, they arrived together. Evan looked annoyed, like this was an inconvenience. Lena looked worried. What's going on, Dad? She asked before they were even fully inside. Nothing bad. Just wanted to catch up. We sat in the living room. Awkward silence. Evan checked his phone twice in the first minute. So, I said, looking at Evan, how's the new grinder working out? His eyes flickered. Haven't used it much. Been busy. Probably for the best. Why's that? I handed him the printed recall notices. 4 pages, official, dated. Manufacturer issued 3 recalls as disc failures, injuries, lawsuits. Evan glanced at the pages, then tossed them on the coffee table. I saw that. It's overblown. People misuse equipment and then blame the manufacturer. 3 separate recalls isn't misuse, I said calmly. It's design failure. Or it's liability paranoia. Evan. Lena's voice, quiet but strained. If there's a recall, maybe just what? He turned to her, sharper than necessary. Return a $400 tool because some weekend warriors couldn't handle it? It's not about handling it, I said. It's about the disc shattering under normal use. Normal use by people who don't know what they're doing. I met his eyes, held them. You know what you're doing? Silence. His jaw tightened. You made 1 cut in my yard, I continued. Jagged, uneven, barely an inch deep. The grinder kicked twice. You couldn't control it. I was getting used to it. No, you were fighting it, because you didn't check the disc, didn't adjust your grip, didn't respect what that tool could do. Evan stood up. I didn't come here to be lectured. Then why did you come? I asked. He didn't answer, just grabbed his keys and walked toward the door. Lena stood too, torn, looking between us. Dad. He's dangerous, Lena. Not because he's bad. Because he thinks he knows more than he does. He's learning, she said weakly. Learning requires humility. He doesn't have that. Evan was already outside. Lena followed, throwing me one last look, hurt, confused, angry, before the door closed. I sat alone in the quiet house, listened to their truck start and drive away. It hadn't worked. The warning, the evidence, the rational conversation, none of it mattered, because Evan didn't believe he needed to listen, and that meant only one thing. I couldn't stop him from hurting himself, but I could make sure that when he did, When the consequences finally arrived, they'd be waiting with documentation, evidence, and institutional weight. I picked up my phone and called Tom Brennan. It's Marlow Trasker. I need to file a formal safety complaint. Against who? Evan Holt, project coordinator, multiple sites, advocating for unsafe practices, documented online. I have video, screenshots, locations. Send me everything, Tom said. I'll start the process. I hung up and opened my laptop, compiled the file. Every video, every post, every location, every violation, organized, dated, cross-referenced. Then I sent it and waited. 3 weeks later, the summons arrived. Not for me, for Evan. Mandatory safety review at the mill's main conference room. Union presence required, site supervisors invited, OSHA observer attending. I didn't get invited, but I knew it was happening. Tom Brennan had called me the day before, voice careful and professional. The review's scheduled for Thursday, 2 p.m. You don't need to be there. In fact, it's probably better if you're not. I understand. Marlow, whatever happens, you did the right thing. If this guy's as reckless as you documented, he needed to be stopped. I know. But be ready. He's going to know you were involved. I'm ready. Thursday afternoon, I took a personal day. Told my supervisor I had an appointment. He didn't ask questions. I drove to the mill anyway, parked in the visitor lot, and sat in my truck with the windows down and a thermos of coffee. At 1:50, cars started arriving. Ed Caldwell from the warehouse site. A woman I didn't recognize, probably OSHA. Tom Brennan in his union jacket. And then last, Evan and Lena. She looked pale. He looked furious. They went inside. I waited. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. I watched the building like it might give me answers. It didn't, just sat there, brick and glass and indifference. At 3:30, the doors opened. People filed out. Ed Caldwell looked grim. The OSHA woman was on her phone. Tom Brennan saw me in the parking lot, gave the smallest nod, and drove away. Evan came out last. Lena beside him, her hand on his arm like she was trying to hold him upright. His face was red. His hands were fists. He saw my truck, saw me sitting there, and he walked straight over. I got out, met him halfway. Lena stayed back, eyes wide and wet. You did this, Evan said, voice shaking. You reported me. I reported unsafe practices, I said calmly. I never mentioned your name. Lying piece of... He stopped himself, breathing hard. You've been sabotaging me for weeks, calling supervisors, sending complaints, all because you can't handle that I'm more successful than you. This isn't about success. Then what is it about? Jealousy? Pride? You couldn't stand that I didn't worship your outdated methods, so you decided to ruin me? I decided to stop you from hurting someone. Hurting someone? I've never hurt anyone. Not yet, but you would have. And when you did, you'd have blamed the equipment, the training, anyone but yourself. Evan took a step closer. I didn't move. Behind him, Lena said his name softly, but he ignored her. I lost my site access, he said, suspended pending further review. My company's being audited, my certifications are under question because of you, because of your choices. I did nothing wrong. You bypassed safety guards. You skipped inspections. You told people that caution was weakness. I have video, Evan, your own words. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger. I saw fear, real, deep, cornered fear. You're destroying my career, he said quietly. No, I'm protecting people from your ignorance. Lena stepped forward then, voice breaking. Dad, why didn't you just talk to us? Why go behind our backs? I looked at my daughter, at the tears on her face, at the way she still stood closer to him than to me. I tried, I said. You didn't want to hear it. Because you were being controlling. I was being careful. There's a difference. This is cruel, she said. He's family. Family doesn't mean I ignore dangerous behavior. It means you give people a chance. I gave him a chance. I warned him about the grinder. I showed him the recalls. I tried to explain. He laughed at me. Evan's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face went gray. What? Lena asked. My boss. Wants to meet tomorrow morning. Maybe it's not. It's not good, Evan said flatly. He looked at me one last time. I'll remember this. I expect you will. They left, drove away without another word. I stood in the parking lot alone and felt the weight of what I'd done settle over me like a blanket. Heavy, necessary, right. But it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. The following Monday, I went back to work. Third shift, midnight to 8. The mill hummed and sparked and roared. indifferent to personal drama. I liked that. The machines didn't care about family disputes or ethical questions. They just worked. And if you respected them, they didn't hurt you. Jimmy Park found me during break. Heard your son-in-law got suspended. Word travels fast. People talk, especially when it involves safety violations. I sipped my coffee, said nothing. Was it really that bad? Jimmy asked. Bad enough. And you're the one who reported him? I looked at him directly. Would it matter if I was? Jimmy considered that. I guess not. If someone's cutting corners, they should be called out. That's what I thought. He left me alone after that, but I could feel the shift in the room. People knew, or suspected, and they were watching me differently. Not hostile, not supportive, just aware. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I worked, I went home, I didn't hear from Lena. Didn't expect to. Then, Friday afternoon, Tom Brennan called. The audit came back. Evan Holt's company failed inspection on 3 active sites. Multiple violations. OSHA's issuing fines. His employer's launching an internal review. And Evan? Officially terminated. They can't keep him on with his certification suspended. I sat down slowly. He lost his job. He lost his job because he was reckless, not because you reported him. Feels the same. It's not. You prevented injuries. Maybe saved lives. Maybe. Marlow, listen to me. You did the right thing. Whether he sees it now or ever, you did the right thing. Thanks, Tom. I hung up and stared at the wall. Tried to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, justice. All I felt was tired. That evening, Lena called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Dad. Her voice was cold. Evan lost his job. I heard. He's devastated. We're barely making rent now. And it's because of you. It's because he ignored safety protocols. He made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Not everyone's mistakes put other people in hospitals. Silence. Then quieter. Did you hate him that much? I never hated him, Lena. Then why? Because I watched him mock experience, dismiss caution, and tell people that shortcuts were smart. And I knew that eventually someone would listen to him. Someone young and trusting, and they'd pay for his arrogance with scars or worse. So you ruined his life instead. I reported violations. The system did the rest. You knew what would happen. I knew what could happen if I didn't. Another silence, longer this time. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, she said. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to understand why. I don't want to understand. I just want my family back. Your family's still here, but I won't apologize for doing what needed to be done. She hung up, didn't say goodbye. I set the phone down and walked out to the workshop. Stood among the tools, old, reliable, safe, and let myself feel the full weight of it. I'd chosen truth over comfort, evidence over loyalty, safety over silence, and it had cost me my daughter, at least for now, maybe forever. I picked up a wrench, felt its weight, its balance, its purpose. Tools didn't lie, didn't pretend, didn't choose sides. They just were. And right now, that simplicity was the only thing keeping me steady. 2 months passed. Lena didn't call, didn't text, didn't visit. I worked my shifts, came home to an empty house, and tried not to think about how quiet my life had become. Caleb checked in once a week, brought coffee or donuts, sat on the porch, talked about nothing important. He never asked about Lena or Evan, just let me know I wasn't completely alone. You did what you had to, he said one Saturday morning. Doesn't make it easier. No, but it makes it right. I wanted to believe him. At the mill, work continued. Orders came in. Steel got cut, shaped, shipped. My station stayed clean. My output stayed consistent. And nobody bothered me with small talk anymore. They knew I'd been involved in something. They just didn't know what to say about it. Then, mid-November, Tom Brennan called again. OSHA's expanding their investigation. They're looking at industry-wide patterns. Evan's videos got flagged as training material. Bad training material. They want to use them as examples in updated safety courses. Examples of what not to do? Exactly. His face will be blurred, but the content will be shown to thousands of workers. As a warning. I almost laughed. Almost. He'd love that, famous for all the wrong reasons. Marlow, there's something else. They want a statement from you. About why you reported him. About the dangers you observed. It would be part of the public record. When? Next week. Thursday. Same conference room. I'll be there. I hung up and stared at the calendar. Circled Thursday in red pen. This was it, the final step. The moment where everything I'd done would either be validated or condemned. I spent the week preparing, wrote out notes, organized my thoughts, practiced staying calm, factual, unemotional. Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what I'd say, how I'd say it, whether Lena would ever understand. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work, took a long shower, put on clean clothes, drove to the mill 2 hours early and sat in the parking lot with my notes. At 1:30, cars started arriving. Tom Brennan, Ed Caldwell, the OSHA woman, 2 people I didn't recognize in business suits. And then, shockingly, Lena. She pulled in slowly, parked far from the entrance, and sat in her car for 5 minutes before getting out. She looked thinner, tired, older. She saw me. Our eyes met across the parking lot. She hesitated, then walked toward the building without acknowledging me. I followed at a distance. Inside, the conference room was set up formally. Long table, microphones, recording equipment, chairs arranged in rows, a screen at the front showing the OSHA logo. I sat in the back. Lena sat in the middle, alone. The meeting started at 2. Introductions, procedures. Then Tom Brennan stood and summarized the case. Evan Holt, unsafe practices, documented evidence, industry implications. Then he called me forward. I walked to the front, sat at the table, adjusted the microphone. State your name and occupation, the OSHA representative said. Marlow Trasker, steel plant operator, 32 years. You filed the initial complaint regarding Evan Holt, correct? Correct. Can you describe what prompted the complaint? I took a breath, kept my voice steady. I observed my son-in-law demonstrating unsafe tool usage, bypassing guards, skipping inspections, encouraging others to do the same. I tried to address it privately. He dismissed me. I realized he wasn't just risking himself. He was influencing others, and eventually someone would get hurt. Did you have personal animosity toward Mr. Holt? No, I had concern for workplace safety. But he is your son-in-law. There's a familial relationship. Which made the decision harder, but not wrong. The representative made a note. What would you say to critics who claim you acted out of jealousy or spite? I looked directly at the camera. I'd say they don't understand the weight of responsibility. When you work with tools that can maim or end a life in seconds, you don't have the luxury of ego. You follow protocols, you respect the equipment, you protect the people around you. Evan didn't do that, and if I'd stayed silent, someone else would have paid for his mistakes. Silence in the room, then the representative nodded. Thank you, Mr. Trasker. I stood, walked back to my seat, didn't look at Lena. The meeting continued. Video evidence was shown. Evan's posts were read aloud. Site violations were detailed. The scope of the issue was laid out, clear and damning. And through it all, I watched my daughter sit perfectly still, staring at the screen, tears running silently down her face. When it ended, people filed out quietly. Lena didn't move. I waited until the room was nearly empty, then walked over and sat beside her. I'm sorry, I said. She wiped her eyes. For what? For hurting you. You weren't trying to hurt me. No, but I knew it would. She nodded slowly. I've been so angry at you. I know. But watching that, hearing the evidence, I realized you were right. He was dangerous, and I defended him anyway. You loved him? I thought I did. Now I don't know what I thought. We sat in silence. Then she said, Evan and I separated last month. I looked at her. I didn't know. I didn't tell you. I was too proud, too ashamed. Lena. He blamed me for everything, said I should have stood up for him more, should have fought you harder, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew you were right, and he hated me for that. I reached over and took her hand. She didn't pull away. I'm sorry, I said again. Don't be. You saved me from something worse. We left together, walked out into the cold November air, stood by our cars, neither wanting to leave yet. Can I come by sometime? She asked. For coffee or dinner or just to talk? Anytime. She nodded, got in her car, drove away. And for the first time in months, I felt something other than weight. I felt hope. December arrived cold and sharp. The mill stayed busy with end-of-year orders, and I worked overtime willingly. Needed the distraction, needed the routine. Lena started coming by once a week, Sunday afternoons usually. We'd sit on the porch if the weather allowed, or in the living room if it didn't, drank coffee, talked about small things, avoided the big ones. She was rebuilding, slowly. She'd moved into a smaller apartment, started therapy, picked up extra shifts at her job. She didn't talk about Evan much. When she did, it was with distance, like he was someone she used to know. He's still trying to get reinstated, she said one afternoon, filing appeals, blaming everyone but himself. That's his choice. Do you think he'll ever understand? Maybe, or maybe he'll stay angry forever. Either way, it's not your responsibility. She nodded, sipped her coffee. I should have listened to you earlier. You listened when you were ready. That's generous. It's true? We fell into a comfortable silence. Outside, Caleb was raking leaves in his yard. He waved, we waved back. I miss this, Lena said quietly. Me too. One evening, Tom Brennan called with an update. OSHA's issued their final report. Evan's case is being used in 3 regional safety seminars. His videos are now official examples of what not to do. It's making a real impact. Good. There's something else. A few companies have reached out. Want you to consult on safety training. Share your perspective. They're willing to pay. I'm not interested. Marlow, you could make real money. I have a job. I like my job. I don't need to be anyone's hero. Tom laughed. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, let me know. I hung up and went back to my evening. Made dinner, watched the news, went to bed early. The next day at work, Greg Poole pulled me aside. Corporate wants to do a feature on long-term employees. Your name came up. Not interested. They'll take photos, write a nice piece, put it in the newsletter. I said no. Greg studied me. You really don't want any recognition, do you? I want to do my job and go home. He nodded. Respect. Let me know if you change your mind. He didn't push. Nobody did. They were starting to understand that I wasn't looking for attention or validation. I was just trying to keep people safe. And that was enough. Christmas came and went. Lena spent it with me. We cooked together, exchanged small gifts, watched old movies. It felt fragile, but real. I'm proud of you, Dad, she said as she was leaving. For what? For doing the hard thing, even when it hurt. I hugged her, held on longer than usual. I'm proud of you, too. She drove away, and I stood in the doorway watching her taillights disappear. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. I cleaned up the dishes, turned off the lights, and went to bed feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. January came in cold and clear. The mill ran steady, orders flowing in from winter construction projects. I worked my shifts, kept my station clean, and trained a new guy named Blair who reminded me of myself 30 years ago. Quiet, careful, eager to learn. Why do you check the blade before every shift? He asked one night. Because the 5 seconds it takes could save your hand. He nodded, serious. My uncle lost 3 fingers on a table saw, rushed a cut. Then you already know why we don't rush. He checked his blade twice after that. One afternoon in late January, I got a call from an unknown number. Hesitated, then answered. Is this Marlow Trasker? Yeah. This is Ed Caldwell, warehouse project supervisor. We met a few months ago. I remember. I wanted to thank you. That complaint you filed, it didn't just stop Evan Holt. It forced us to audit our entire safety program. We found gaps, fixed them. Last week, we prevented a scaffolding collapse because someone actually checked the anchors like they were supposed to. I sat down slowly. Anyone hurt? No one. Because of the protocols we put in place after your report. I didn't know what to say. Anyway, Ed continued, I thought you should know. What you did mattered. Thanks for calling. I hung up and stared at the wall. Thought about scaffolding that didn't collapse. Workers who went home safe. Families that didn't get the worst phone call of their lives. All because I'd filed a complaint. All because I'd refused to stay silent. That evening, Lena called. Hey, Dad, want to grab dinner this weekend? I'd like that. There's a new place downtown. Italian. My treat. You don't have to? I know, but I want to. We made plans, said goodbye. And I sat in the quiet house feeling something settle deep in my chest. Not pride, not vindication, just the calm certainty that I'd done what needed to be done. The following Thursday, I was finishing my shift when Greg Poole approached. Marlow, got a minute? Sure. OSHA's doing a site inspection next week. They want to talk to you, ask about your safety practices. Apparently your name came up in their report as an example of proper protocol. I'm not interested in being an example. Understood, but they're coming either way. Just giving you a heads up. I nodded. Thanks. The inspection happened on a Tuesday morning. I came in early, met with 2 OSHA reps in the conference room. They asked about my routine, my checks, my training. I answered honestly, plainly, without embellishment. "You've worked here 32 years, one of them said. 0 incidents on your record. That's impressive. It's just consistency. Most people get complacent. You haven't. Why?" I thought about that, about the weight of steel in your hands, the sound of a blade spinning, the knowledge that one mistake, one moment of carelessness, could change everything. "Because I've seen what happens when people do," I said. They thanked me, left, filed their report. The mill passed inspection with commendations, and life went on. February arrived. Lena came by more often. We talked easier now, laughed occasionally. The wound between us was healing, slow but real. One Sunday, she brought a box of old photos. We sat at the kitchen table and went through them. Pictures of her as a kid, my wife smiling, family vacations, moments frozen in time. "I'm sorry I doubted you," Lena said, holding a photo of the two of us from years ago. "You were loyal to someone you loved. Nothing wrong with that. Even when he was wrong? Even then. You figured it out eventually. That's what matters." She set the photo down. "Do you ever regret it? Reporting him?" "No." "Not even a little?" "Not even a little." She nodded. "Good." We finished going through the photos, packed them back up, made plans for next week. As she was leaving, she hugged me. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too." I watched her drive away, then went back inside. The house felt less empty now, less heavy. I made dinner, watched television, went to bed at a reasonable hour. And the next morning, I woke up, dressed, and went to work. The mill was waiting, the steel was waiting, the job was waiting, and I was ready. Because that's what you do. You show up, you do the work, you keep people safe, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it's right, and sometimes that's all the victory you need.